Not all who encountered Jesus saw the Christ immediately. Some saw Jesus as a mere curiosity. Some probably saw in him an entertainer, or a magician, or a controversial figure. Discipleship, dear friends, begins with a longing, a basic longing. Like that desire that made Zacchaeus climb the sycamore tree. I do not know what trees you have climbed in your longing to see Jesus. This longing is what the Master, acting like a potter, shapes and forms like clay in his hand. He has shaped you, your longing, with love and care. And now that we move to follow, to see, to follow, to love, to follow. The reply of Jesus to the request is a little bit funny. They just wanted to see Jesus. And Jesus gave a long speech. And he started saying, unless the grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. Why was he delivering such a speech? All they were asking for was to see Jesus. Well, I think this is John's way of saying, you want to see Jesus? Follow him. Be ready to fall and die. Be ready to suffer and be planted like a grain of wheat. A desire is a desire. It has to be molded and shaped. You remember Jesus and James and John. Those two brothers who wanted to sit one at the right and one at the left of Jesus. Remember what Jesus said to them when they communicated their request? Jesus said, you do not know what you are asking for. I'm sure, my dear sisters, you also did not fully know immediately what you were asking for, what you were longing for at the start. When the process got rough, you may have been tempted to back out. And Jesus, probably during those difficult days, said to you, I beg your pardon, I never promised you a rose garden. The life of discipleship is not a walk in the park, dear sisters. The prospect of suffering and dying sounds grim, but Jesus presents it very differently. He calls it a lifting up. When I am lifted up, he says, it is not a thing to be terrified about. Why? Because following Jesus is about loving Jesus. You want to follow? Learn to love. Or better yet, learn to respond to my love for you. That brings us to the last thing, to love Jesus. The last and the most important aspect of discipleship, loving Jesus. Jesus says, when I am lifted up, I will draw everyone to myself. I will draw everyone to myself. To be drawn to Jesus. This is what the longing to see and the following are about. We are merely being drawn to Jesus. To love is to be drawn. Perhaps that is why Jesus calls it the commandment of love. My commandment to you is only this, that you love one another as I have loved you. You know, Pope Benedict XVI, in the first encyclical, he wrote, Deus caritas est, God is love. is thinking out loud and asking the curious question, can love be commanded? Pwede mo bang ipag-utos ang pag-ibig? Can you command love? Can you say to somebody, love me? Are we calling love a commandment in that sense? Well, he says, no. Love is a commandment not from without, but from within. You are merely being drawn. At the start, you think the loving is about you. No, the loving is about the beloved who draws you. It is about the God who has invited you to a relationship. And you have generously responded. And can I safely believe that that is what has brought you here? Parang wala akong release. That you are merely responding to this invitation to love, to enter into a covenant, into a deep personal relationship with His Son, Jesus. What is the proof that we have learned to love? What is the proof that we have learned to respond with love? Well, the Gospel says it too. Surrender. Surrender. The latter part of the Gospel strikes me as something almost similar to the prayer of Jesus during the agony in the garden. He says, I am troubled now, yet what should I say? Father, save me from this hour? You remember when He said, Father, if it be Thy will, let this cup pass from me. Is that what I should ask for? And then He says, but it was for this purpose that I came to this hour. And so He says rather, Father, glorify Your name. That is the other version of Thy will be done. An act of surrender. Not my will, but Your will be done. I look at you, dear sisters, and I see very strong-willed individuals. And most likely to start, very self-willed individuals. But you allow your longing to be shaped, to be formed, to be molded by the potter, to be molded by the beloved. And here you are now, because you have surrendered yourselves to Christ. I know that some people do not like the word surrender because it sounds very negative. It makes it sound like you are defeated, It makes it sound like you have no choice. And that is why sometimes I prefer to describe it as not surrender, but embracing a will greater than your own. Embracing a will greater than your own. The last line of the Gospel is even more curious. John says, in saying this, he was sort of predicting the kind of death with which he would die. The kind of death, ang uri ng kamatayan na ikamamatay niya. The kind of death. Why? Are there many kinds of death? When you think of death, you immediately think that there's only one kind of death. We're all just, stop breathing. But John doesn't think so. The Gospel writer talks about a different kind of death in Jesus. The kind of death. Jesus' kind of dying is what we must learn. Not all deaths are worth the same thing. To die like Jesus is to love unconditionally,